Wake Up Wyoming. My name's Glenn Woods. On the phone with me, Mark Watson. He is the Wyoming Oil and Gas Commissioner. Mr. Watson, thanks for coming on this morning.
It's a pleasure to be here, Glenn.
I'm here with Nick, our news director for the state of Wyoming. So we have a few questions for you about, of course, oil and gas in the state of Wyoming. The people we've talked to so far this morning from those industries are trying to remain optimistic. Of course, at some point, people need to start driving and using energy again, and that's when these industries start to pick up just a little bit. From the state of Wyoming's perspective, anything in mind to maybe give them a help or give them a boost, regulatory or taxation-wise?
Well, sure. So one of the first things that we did was we have a conservation tax that we collect on production, and that's what funds this agency. We're a self-funded agency. So we eliminated that tax back in April for a 6-month period, and that was just something that would help all operators. There's a little over 400 operators in the state, so that's something that we felt would help all operators. And we're also working with individual operators if they have issues as far as testing. We can put that off. Bonding, we're not requiring new bonding this year, so we've worked a lot on an individual basis.
Do you see a little bit of movement in the industry in the state of Wyoming right now, or is everybody just pretty much on hold and maintaining?
Well, as far as drilling, they're on hold. You talked earlier about break-even prices of 45. Remember when you 45, that's WTI, West Texas, and we're usually $6 or $7 below that. So you're going to need to see at least 55 WTI before people might start drilling. We have 2 rigs going right now. Production-wise, we're starting to see an uptick in some wells that were shut in. A lot of wells, the horizontal wells, if they had hedges, they maintained those. So production-wise, I think when I look at production from April to versus March, it was down about 18% for oil and down about 5% for natural gas.
Mr. Watson, good morning. With the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, for folks who maybe aren't familiar, can you explain your role and your relationship with producers in the state?
Sure. So we're a small agency. We have 41 employees. We're headquartered in Casper, and we're involved in the oil industry. It's a kind of a cradle to grave involvement that we're at, and even before the wells are drilled, we're involved in hearings to set up these drilling and spacing units to protect the correlative rights issues. When the wells are drilled, they need drilling permits. Once the well's completed, we're involved in the hydraulic fracturing. We have permits that they have to provide to us first before they do any of that. We're involved in the production. We keep track of all the production in the state, whether it's federal, state, or private minerals. And so we have a huge database that other state agencies, federal agencies use. And then right to the end, when wells are reach their economic limit, we're involved in the plug-in and abandonment approval of that thing.
Sure. Glenn talks on this show frequently about how, with whatever sector it is, whatever business, largely the theme is government needs to get out of the way and let these folks operate the way they want to, and that's going to be good for the economy. In terms of your relationship and your permitting, your regulation of oil and gas producers in the state, how do you feel your level is there?
Well, that's a double-edged sword as far as regulation. Because as a self-funded agency, in some ways we promote, the development of the resources in Wyoming by providing regulatory certainty, getting the permits approved in a good amount of, a short amount of time, things like that. But I find I've been in this business for 37 years, and the majority of operators, they follow the rules. It's just good business.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with the pandemic and some of the changes you've made, these implementations, you talked about that tax and trying to relax that to make things a little easier on the producers who are feeling the brunt of some of this. What's the importance of still ensuring compliance and ensuring that they're operating responsibly?
Well, compliance is important. That's what we do. We have a set of rules and statutes, and we have to enforce them. We can't, put things on hold during these times. But, we have 11 field inspectors, and, they're the ultimate in social distancing because they're by themselves out in the field. So, they continue to work throughout this whole COVID issue.
Sure, and you talked about keeping a pretty consistent regulatory environment, a quick permitting process, as a way of benefiting oil and gas producers in the state, ensuring that they can operate pretty smoothly with some certainty, which we know is really important. What's that environment like right now? What changes or projects has the commission been working on recently in that regard?
Well, the first thing that we had to do, like everybody else, was learn to work from home. So that was quite a challenge, to get everybody set up from home.
Real familiar with Zoom these days, I guess.
Yeah, we certainly are. And then, a program that I mentioned, we're involved in plugging. So when companies go bankrupt or for other issues, we have to revoke their bonds. We're involved we actually take over and plug these wells. So we have a program that we've had forever, but it's the last probably 8 years we've had to do a lot more. We normally plug about 500 wells a year, which is mostly in the summer, obviously, because of weather. This year, the governor asked us to step it up a bit, so we're going to try and have at least 1,000 wells packages under contract by the end of July and, get more companies working, during these slow times.
Certainly, and when you talk about those bankruptcies, those reasons you have to plug the wells, have you seen any of those with oil and gas companies in Wyoming in the last couple of years?
In the last couple of years, the majority of them are these coal bed wells that, the coal bed play was big in 2010, and when gas prices were $8 or $9 an MCF, but when it dropped to $1, most of them went bankrupt.
Well, let me ask you real quick. If your agency is funded by the production work that's out there, then you must have seen a bit of a downturn yourself at your agency.
Well, that's a good question. People have mentioned that, but I've saved money over the last 4 or 5 years. We have other methods of funding the agency through permit fees and hearing fees. So, I had money saved up, and I thought, well, save up for a rainy day, and now it's raining. So it was our way to help industry who funds us.
Have you heard any specific complaints or concerns from those people who are in the industry who want to get back working again? What are they saying to you?
Not much right now because everybody's kind of hunkered down trying to figure out, when are the prices going to come back, and that's when they'll get back to work. We still have hearings every month, and so operators are obviously optimistic that when things turn around, they want to be ready to get some wells drilled.
Definitely. And you mentioned those monthly meetings. For folks who want to keep up with what the commission is doing, what's the best way for them to do that? Probably attend the meetings, but that might be a little tough with the social distancing requirements.
It certainly is. So last month we did our first Zoom hearing, and then we would stream that on YouTube for everybody to watch. This month we're going to go back to live hearings, but we're only going to have the people that are involved in the hearings, but we'll stream all the exhibits and the audio to YouTube, so anybody can watch it. They just have to go to our website for a link.
Sure, and nice to at least have the main proceedings done live. That way, you ensure everybody's wearing pants.
Yeah, you hope. Maybe not underwear. Look, let me ask you about the people who are going to come into those meetings. My understanding is that a lot of them are not the big oil companies like people tend to think of. People think of oil as big oil. Is it that way, or is it mom and pop?
Well, the big oil days are, the Exxons and Marathons and BPs of the world, they've, for the most part, left the state. These new companies, they're funded private equity companies, and, they're well funded, and these are the ones that are drilling the horizontal wells in the Powder River Basin and also down in Laramie County. And that's, the horizontal drilling is probably 95% of our drilling permits that we process.
Okay. Are these Wyoming-based companies, or are they all coming from out of state? What's the majority of who you're working with?
The majority of them are based out of state.
Okay. And what about I guess that means the employees kind of migrate in and out depending on where the jobs are.
Well, the employees, they all have field offices. They have field people, in Wyoming.
Okay. All right. So if they want to get in touch with you, again, you guys are open for business, but where do they get in touch with you?
Well, we're in Casper. They can go to our website. They can just Google Wyoming Oil and Gas Commission.
Okay. Hopefully we'll find you guys up and running and back in business soon with a lot of drilling going on in the state of Wyoming. But some of the impression that I'm getting, last question for you, is this might be a slower process than we want.
As far as the recovery?
Yes.
Oh, definitely. It's
Okay.
definitely going to take a little longer.